They said he'd never smile again, not after the accident that left his tiny body broken and his mother buried with the baby still in her belly, but when the billionaire walked in and saw the black maid dancing with his disabled son, everything he thought he knew shattered. The Graceland estate sat high above Memphis like a crown made of marble and silence. Its halls didn't echo with laughter, only footsteps, only orders, only emptiness. Alexander Wilson had built empires from concrete and glass, tech, real estate, investments, you name it. But he hadn't built peace. Not inside that mansion, not inside himself. Most days, he walked past his son like the boy was made of crystal, fragile, quiet, distant. Kevin was just 8, but he moved like he was older, slower. His right leg was gone below the knee, replaced by a prosthetic that never quite fit right. Just like him, he didn't fit anywhere. Not after the accident. Not after the night his mother's car spun out on a rain-slicked road with Kevin in the back seat and a second life in her womb. Only Kevin survived. They said the baby might have saved him, cushioning his tiny body as metal and glass tore through the night. But saving came at a cost. Since then, Kevin barely spoke, barely smiled, lived inside books and soft corners. Every nanny quit within months. Some said he was haunted. Maybe he was. And Alexander kept himself busy. Boardrooms, flights, deals. He told himself he was protecting Kevin by not getting too close. He told himself he was doing what was best. But mostly, he avoided the ghost of his wife in the boy's eyes. And then one morning, Tracy Ellison walked through the servants' entrance. She wasn't from an agency. She came recommended by a friend of a cousin who worked the Wilson Gardens. She was late 30s, braided hair wrapped in a scarf, sharp eyes that had seen things, and a smile she didn't give away for free. The head of staff barely looked at her twice. Another maid, another face, another pair of hands. But Kevin noticed her. He was peeking from behind the second-floor railing, gripping the polished wood like it might vanish. And she looked up, not just at him, but into him, like she saw something others had stopped looking for. She didn't smile, she nodded. He didn't nod back. But he didn't disappear either. The days passed like they always did in Graceland. White gloves, silver trays, silence. Until one rainy Thursday afternoon, Tracy broke the rules. She brought music, not classical, not smooth jazz. It was soul, old soul. Marvin Gaye, Stevie Wonder, Luther. Songs with pain and rhythm in equal measure. She was supposed to be cleaning, folding sheets, dusting off memories. But she danced, just a little, alone in the laundry room, closed door, feet light, shoulders swaying, head tilted toward a memory she didn't talk about, and Kevin saw her. She didn't know at first, but she felt it. The air shifted, she turned, and there he was, watching, staring, not blinking. She froze, but he didn't run. He stepped inside. One step, then another, like the music was pulling him. And Tracy did something no one else had dared to do in years. She held out her hand. Be honest, if you were her, would you have reached for his hand, or walked away like everyone else did? Drop your answer in the comments. And while you're here, if this story is already pulling at something inside you, don't just watch. Subscribe. Don't leave without showing love to the storytellers who bring these moments to life. We see you. Kevin didn't speak, not a word. He just stood there, one foot slightly crooked, the other metal humming silently beneath him. Tracy watched his eyes, not his body, not the awkward balance, not the scar along his cheek, his eyes. They were asking something, begging even, not for help but for permission. So she gave it. One slow step closer, holding out her hand again, no pressure, no force, just a silent invitation, and then, like a switch turned, he took it. His fingers were cold, small, unsure. Her hand closed around his like it had always been meant to. And then, they danced. Not well, not properly, but real. Kevin didn't know steps, didn't know rhythm. His body fumbled more than it flowed. But he smiled. For the first time in years, he smiled. Not because someone told him to, not to please a camera or a doctor or a guilt-ridden father. He smiled because something inside him cracked open. Tracy laughed, a real belly-deep laugh, as he stumbled into a mop bucket and splashed soapy water everywhere. But Kevin laughed louder. That sound, it echoed in the room like sunlight. And then, the door opened. A sharp, cold click. Tracy turned mid-laugh. Kevin froze. And in the doorway stood Alexander Wilson, tie loosened, phone still in hand, face unreadable. He wasn't supposed to be home yet. He stared at them. The billionaire, the maid, and the disabled boy spinning in a circle, wet socks on tile, grinning like a new soul had stepped into his skin. The music was still playing, soft. Ain't no mountain high enough? Barely audible now. No one moved. Kevin's smile faded. His hand slipped from Tracy's, and the weight of the world crashed back into the room. Alexander didn't speak. Not yet. His eyes flicked, from the boy, to the woman, to the mop water on the floor, to the speaker in the corner. This wasn't protocol, this wasn't dignified, this wasn't Graceland. And yet, that laugh, that smile, the one he hadn't heard in years, it had come from his son, because of her, because of this. Tracy stepped back, head lowered, arms folded behind her apron like a soldier in front of a general. Sir, But she didn't finish, because Kevin stepped forward, just a little, and did something that stopped Alexander's breath. He reached for her hand again, right in front of him, no shame, no fear, just truth, raw, small, and shaking. But truth. And in that moment, Alexander didn't yell, didn't scold, didn't fire her. He just watched, like his whole past was playing out in front of him, and for once he couldn't turn away. You're still watching, aren't you? That means something in this story is touching you. If Kevin's smile did something to you just now, don't scroll past. Subscribe. Let this kind of storytelling stay alive. It costs you nothing, but it gives everything to someone like Kevin. The music had long since stopped, but the silence was louder than ever. Tracy hadn't seen Alexander for 2 whole days after that moment in the laundry room. No feedback, no dismissal, no words. Just cold space. Breakfast trays delivered to his office, doors closed, footsteps muffled. It was like the house had gone back to holding its breath. In the kitchen, the staff whispered, "Did she really dance with him?" Right there in the open. Bet she's gone by Friday. Tracy heard it all, but she said nothing. She just kept working, folding, wiping, cooking, moving like she wasn't shaking inside, because, truthfully, she didn't know where she stood now. Had she crossed a line? She hadn't meant to. She just saw the boy, really saw him, and something inside her acted, and now she felt like she was being erased again, like that moment didn't matter. But it did. Upstairs, Kevin had gone quiet again, not withdrawn, not completely, but cautious. His laugh hadn't returned. His eyes kept darting to doors, waiting. He didn't ask for music, didn't look for her in the mornings, but Tracy noticed the small things. How he lingered in the hallway when she passed, how he sat closer to the stairs during vacuuming hours, just to be near the noise of life. He was still reaching, but this time, unsure if it was safe. And Alexander? He tried to work. God knows he tried. But every time he stared at a spreadsheet or a boardroom memo, he saw that dance, that hand in hand, that soaked mop bucket, that laugh. It haunted him, because it didn't come from therapy or tutors or money. It came from a woman he hadn't even glanced at properly, a woman he'd categorized, hired, forgotten. And yet she'd done something in 3 minutes that he hadn't done in 8 years. She'd brought his son back, but that terrified him, because if she could reach Kevin, she could also awaken the parts of Alexander he'd buried long ago, and he wasn't ready for that. So he did what scared men do. He retreated. He avoided the one person who could remind him that he'd failed at the one thing that mattered, being a father. Tracy stood outside his office one night, holding a report about linen shortages. It was an excuse. She knocked. Twice. "Come in," came the voice. Cold, professional. She stepped inside. He didn't look up. "Just leave it on the desk." She placed the paper down slowly. Waited. "Mr. Wilson," she said softly, I want to apologize. If I stepped out of place." "You didn't." The words were quick, final, but not warm. He finally looked at her. "I saw what I saw. You don't need to explain yourself." She nodded, but her heart sank, because in those few words, he'd done exactly what she feared. He made it seem like it meant nothing, like that dancing was just a blip, a glitch in the system. And as she turned to leave, he added one more line, without looking at her. "Just keep it professional from now on." It was supposed to be a quiet Saturday. The sky over Memphis stretched wide and soft, clouds drifting like forgotten prayers above Graceland Estate. The Wilsons didn't usually host weekend guests, not anymore. But today a friend from Alexander's board was visiting with his wife and child, a polite gesture. Business dressed as brunch. Kevin had been asked to come downstairs, not forced, just asked. And maybe it was the way Alexander said it, not as a command but as a question, that made the boy say yes. Tracy was in the garden, arranging fruit and pastries. The caterers had already laid the basics: white cloth tables, silver thermoses, dainty tongs. It was too quiet, too stiff. She snuck a few apple slices off the tray for Kevin, not because she had to, but because she knew he'd skip the muffins. He always did. She turned, and there he was, wheeling himself across the grass in his new chair, prosthetic, covered by long khakis, a bit stiff in the arms but moving on his own. And behind him, Alexander, dressed down, but still carrying himself like the world owed him answers. Their eyes met. Neither said a word. But then Kevin rolled up beside Tracy and held out his hand. Not for help, but for the apple. She smiled and placed it gently in his palm. He nodded. Once. Alexander saw that. He saw the ease, the quiet trust, the way his son didn't flinch or recoil. There was no script, no expectations, just peace. And for some reason that made him stay longer than he planned. The other child, a bubbly 7-year-old girl named Macy, ran up to Kevin and waved excitedly. "Want to play tag?" Kevin hesitated. Tracy saw the look. He wanted to. God, he wanted to. But he also didn't want to fail in front of her, in front of them. So Tracy crouched beside him and whispered, "You don't have to run to chase someone, sweetheart. You just have to roll faster than they run." Kevin smiled, that crooked, almost there smile. "Okay," he said softly. And just like that, he was in the game. Laughter followed, light and uneven, but pure. Macy screamed dramatically as Kevin gave chase in his chair, spinning on a dime and nearly knocking over a garden lantern. Tracy laughed. Alexander chuckled. The sound surprised them both. He looked at Tracy, and for the first time in days, really looked. No apron, no title, just her, his son's lifeline, and maybe something more. After the guests left, Tracy stayed behind to clean up the lemonade glasses. Alexander stood a few feet away, staring at the empty lawn where Kevin had been running in circles. "Didn't think I'd ever see him move like that," he said, almost to himself. Tracy didn't look up. He's always had it in him, just needed someone to remind him. Alexander nodded slowly, then said, quieter, "I should have been that someone." Tracy paused and replied with a soft, honest calm, "It's not too late." Later that night, the rain returned to Memphis, soft at first, then steady, tapping against the windows of Graceland like fingers asking to be let in. The estate felt quieter than usual. Tracy was folding laundry when Kevin came in, dragging his blanket behind him like a soft shadow. "Can't sleep," he mumbled. She set the towel down and opened her arms. He climbed up on the couch beside her, no hesitation now. That was new. They sat in silence, listening to the rain, until he finally asked, Do you think people come back after they leave? She looked down at him. His eyes weren't curious. They were aching. She brushed a lock of hair from his forehead. Sometimes. Not always the way we expect, though. He nodded slowly. I dream about her. My mom. I miss her even though I don't remember her. Tracy didn't speak at first. Then, quietly, she said, I had a baby once. Kevin turned toward her, surprised. A boy, she continued. His name was Eli. What happened to him? Kevin asked, voice small. He got sick, real sick. I was young, working 2 jobs, couldn't afford the treatments in time. A pause. He was gone by the time he was 4. Kevin stared at her, and for the first time Tracy let the tears rise. Not loud, not messy, but there, honest. I didn't talk about him for a long time. Not even to myself, she whispered. Because if I did, it meant it really happened. Kevin reached over and held her hand. Just held it, like she had held his. Meanwhile, Alexander stood outside the door. He hadn't meant to eavesdrop. He'd been walking the hall, restless, trying to think, and stopped when he heard voices. But now he stood frozen, hearing every word, every truth. Tracy's voice, her pain, her story. It wasn't just about Kevin. It was about loss, about grief, about surviving it. Something inside him cracked, because for the first time he realized he wasn't the only one grieving in that house, and maybe he'd been so lost in his own pain, he'd failed to see the strength sitting just a few feet away every day. Not just strength. Grace. The next morning, Tracy found a small envelope on the kitchen counter. No name, no seal, just a note inside. Thank you for not giving up on him. I'm sorry I didn't see what you've been carrying. She didn't smile, but she exhaled, and sometimes that's more sacred than a smile. If you've ever carried grief in silence like Tracy, or waited years for someone to see you like Alexander did, then don't scroll past this story. Subscribe. Not just for the story, but for everyone who's healing in the shadows right now. The following week passed like a quiet song. There were no grand moments, no speeches, no declarations, just small things. Kevin started spending more time out of his room, not because he was told, but because he wanted to. He sat at the kitchen counter while Tracy cooked. He wheeled into the garden during sunset, just to feel the warmth on his face. He even laughed when one of the estate's peacocks flared its feathers and scared a gardener into dropping a tray of lemon tarts. It was the kind of laugh that made you stop what you were doing just to hold the sound in your chest for a second longer. Alexander noticed it all. He didn't say much. But every time he passed Kevin in the hallway or heard him giggle from another room, he paused, long enough for Tracy to catch it, and every time she caught it, something softened behind her eyes, like she'd started believing this house might not always be filled with ghosts. One night, Alexander came into the kitchen, a place he rarely visited, and found Tracy dancing again. No music this time, just a soft sway as she wiped the counter, lips humming an old gospel tune only Southern hearts would recognize. He didn't interrupt. He just watched, and when she finally noticed him, she stilled, unsure, suddenly aware of how easily this could shift. But he raised a hand. "Don't stop," he said. "It's the first time this kitchen's felt alive in years." Tracy chuckled. "I wasn't dancing for the kitchen." He smiled. "I know." They stood in silence for a moment, not heavy, not awkward, just present. Then Alexander leaned against the doorway and said, "I used to dance with Tracy her." Looked at him. "My wife, at our wedding, she said I had 2 left feet." He smiled at the memory. "That woman had rhythm in her bones. Me? I just held on and tried not to step on her shoes." Tracy grinned. "Sounds like love to me." He nodded. It was. A beat. Then he asked something unexpected. "Do you ever think the people we lose send others in their place?" Tracy didn't answer right away. She walked over to the stove, turned off the burner, and said quietly, "Only the lucky ones get second chances." In the hallway, Kevin sat in his chair listening. He wasn't eavesdropping, he was just there, close enough to hear the hush in their voices. The way his father didn't sound like a stranger anymore. And in that moment, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Safe, not just with Tracy, but maybe with him, too. It started with a photo, one that should have never left the estate, a snapshot taken from a second-floor window during last weekend's garden brunch. Kevin, mid-spin in his chair, Tracy, dancing beside him, laughing, her hand gently on his shoulder. At first glance, it looked like joy, but through the wrong lens, it looked like something else. By Monday morning, it had gone viral on a niche parenting blog. Billionaire's Maid or Miracle Worker? It was meant to be sweet, even inspiring. But internet eyes twist quickly. Comments exploded. Some praised the moment, others didn't. Unprofessional. Why is a maid that close to her boss's kid? Where's the mother? Bet the father's not far behind. The speculation got ugly, fast. And by Tuesday afternoon, the board of one of Alexander's largest investors was calling. They weren't amused. Optics, Alex. It's not about truth. It's about perception. Tracy found out the way most people do, by accident. A younger staffer whispered about it in the laundry room, unaware she was behind the door. She clicked the article with trembling hands, read every word, saw every comment, and felt her entire stomach turn. The photo, the look on her face. Kevin's joy, twisted into gossip and suspicion. She closed the tab, quietly folded her phone, went back to work. But something inside her cracked, not because of the article, but because she knew what was coming. That night, Alexander called her into the study. He didn't look angry, but he looked distant, back in his armor. "Close the door," he said quietly. She did. He sat behind the desk, the article printed and highlighted in front of him. "I didn't leak it," she said before he asked. "I know." Silence. He rubbed the bridge of his nose. The investors are upset. They're questioning boundaries, protocol. Tracy stood tall, still, waiting for the blow. "I need to reassign you." There it was, not fire, but exile. "I'll have you placed in another part of the house, away from Kevin, temporarily." "Temporarily," she echoed. He nodded. "It's just until this dies down." Her voice stayed calm, controlled. "And what do you tell him?" Alexander swallowed hard. "That it's not about him." "But it is." A pause. "You saw the smile come back to his face," she continued. "You heard him laugh again. You know what this connection means to him. And now you're walking away because strangers made noise." He looked away. "You think I don't know what people say about women like me?" she whispered. "Black. Poor. From the South." Too close to the people with power, her voice didn't shake. Not once. "I've heard it all my life." Alexander opened his mouth, but no words came. "And Tracy?" She just nodded, not in agreement, but in acceptance. "I thought this place was different," she said. "I thought you were." And then she turned and walked out. Kevin found her packing the next morning. He didn't cry. He didn't yell. He just sat by the door, holding the apple slice she gave him the first day they met. He didn't understand the article, didn't care about perception. All he knew was she was leaving, and somehow he knew his father was the reason. She gave them everything, her care, her story, her heart, and still it wasn't enough. If this moment hit you, if you've ever felt pushed aside just for being who you are, don't walk away, subscribe. Let your voice stand for people like Tracy. Graceland had never felt heavier. No storms, no music. Just air so still, it made every breath feel like a burden. Tracy had moved to the East Wing, no longer on Kevin's floor. No more morning muffins, no more soft gospel tunes echoing in the laundry room. Just tasks, silence, distance. Alexander hadn't seen her in 2 days. He wanted to. God knows he wanted to. But every time he neared the hallway, His guilt chained him to the floor, not because he didn't believe her, but because, when it mattered most, he didn't protect her. And that silence, the one he'd used like armor for years, had finally turned on him. Kevin had stopped smiling again, stopped eating with the staff. He didn't throw tantrums, he didn't beg. He just went quiet. And in that silence, Alexander heard the clearest cry for help he'd ever known. That night, he walked into Kevin's room. The boy was staring at the ceiling, blanket clutched to his chest. "Hey," Alexander said gently. Kevin didn't respond. Alexander sat at the edge of the bed. "I made a mistake." Still no words, but Kevin's eyes slowly turned to him. "I was scared," Alexander admitted, "scared of losing control, of people talking, of the board, the world judging us." He swallowed. "But I forgot something really important." Kevin blinked. "I forgot that your smile, your happiness, matters more than my reputation ever could." A long pause. Then Kevin whispered, "You made her cry." Alexander felt that like a slap. "I know," he said. "I'm going to try to make it right." Kevin looked away, but for the first time in days, he didn't close his eyes. Tracy sat in the servants' garden the next morning, where no guests ever went. She was sipping tea, hands wrapped around the cup like it might disappear if she let go. She didn't expect to see Alexander walking down the gravel path, but she didn't flinch when he did. He sat across from her without asking. Silence stretched between them, thick with everything unsaid. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said. "Good," she replied. Another pause. "I just needed to say I was wrong." Tracy looked at him, eyes tired, not angry, not broken, just done. "You let them write a story about me, without ever asking me who I am." He nodded. "You're right. I was protecting your son, lifting him, not climbing some ladder." "I know." She set the tea down gently, then finally asked, "So why did you believe them?" Alexander looked down, and then, softly, he told the truth. "Because I didn't believe I deserved something good happening here." The wind shifted. A few leaves danced. Tracy stared at him for a long moment. "You're not the only one who's lost something, Alexander." He nodded. "But maybe we can stop losing." He reached into his coat pocket and handed her something small. A folded drawing, Kevin's, a stick figure version of himself smiling. Beside him, Tracy, underneath. 3 words in shaky pencil. "Come back, please." Would you come back after everything? After the silence, the judgment, the hurt? If this drawing moved you, then don't leave this moment without subscribing. Let's build a world where second chances matter. The invitation came 2 weeks later, a formal garden reception, charity fundraiser for children with physical disabilities. Alexander had organized it himself, but what he really built was a moment. He didn't care about the press, or the investors, or the guests walking around in pearls and pastels. He cared about the boy in the navy blazer, sitting near the stage with nervous eyes, and the woman in the back, unsure if she should even be there. Tracy had been surprised to receive the envelope, even more surprised that it wasn't stamped. It was hand-delivered by Alexander himself. He said nothing when he gave it to her, just waited. And when she opened it and saw her name, not her position, not her title, written in clean, clear cursive, she knew. As the string quartet played softly and donors clinked champagne flutes, Alexander stepped up to the microphone. He cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, voice steady but full of soul, "tonight's event is about support, about giving children the chance to feel seen, strong, unstoppable." He glanced toward Kevin, and then he looked directly at Tracy. "But it's also about gratitude," he said, "because sometimes the person who brings life back into your home doesn't come from a boardroom or a hospital. Sometimes they come wrapped in quiet dignity and an apron." The crowd went still. Alexander smiled. "I made a mistake. I let noise drown out truth. But tonight, I'd like to ask someone to help me fix that." He turned, and nodded at Kevin. Kevin turned his chair toward the speaker playing softly in the grass. A familiar song began to play. Ain't no mountain high enough. Tracy froze. People turned. Eyes widened. But Kevin didn't care. He rolled toward her, arm outstretched. He reached for her hand, and this time, she didn't hesitate. She stood. She walked, and she took his hand, right there, in front of everyone. And they danced, not like dancers, but like survivors, her hands guiding, his wheels spinning. The song rose. So did the joy. Laughter filled the lawn, not mockery, but magic. Alexander stood in the middle of it all, eyes wet but proud, not of himself but of them, of what they built together. When the music ended, Tracy leaned down and whispered something in Kevin's ear. He nodded, then turned to the crowd and shouted with everything in his lungs, "That's my friend!" The applause was thunder. Tears came freely now, not from grief, but from relief, from release, from finally being seen. Later that evening, as the sun began to dip below Memphis skies, Alexander found Tracy near the rose trellis. "Thank you," he said. She smiled. "You don't have to thank me." "I do," he replied. "For Kevin, for the music, for staying, even when I didn't deserve it." Tracy looked at him, full of light. "I stayed for Kevin. The rest is up to you." He nodded. Then, awkwardly, nervously, held out his hand. "Dance?" he asked, a small grin tugging at his lips. Tracy laughed. "You still got 2 left feet?" "Always." She took his hand anyway, and beneath the soft gold of the Memphis evening, they swayed. No cameras, no whispers, just music. And maybe the start of something neither of them ever expected. Do you believe that true love, whether between friends, family, or something deeper, can survive even after being tested this hard? If this story moved you, if it reminded you that healing is possible, then don't just scroll, subscribe. Be part of a space that values stories with heart.